My experience has been, not only in this church, but in other churches, and in non-church organizations, that those organizations that are, where the leadership has left not under a cloud, which is true of this church, and they have a sense that things are going along pretty well. There's a real resistance to the interim process. Sort of like, why do we need to do that? We're doing fine. Why are you coming in here messing things up for us? Why don't you just leave us alone and let us do our thing? And I'm a strong believer in the interim process, and that doesn't move the congregation along to where it needs to get to in order that the new pastor coming can really start afresh. Could you speak more to that?
I can try. What I often find after I've been there for a couple of months is that things start to bubble up to the surface. Yes, things are probably just fine. Everything is moving along just fine. Why do we need to do this? But underneath, somebody's unhappy. Somebody doesn't like the way things have been going. We try to ferret that out by doing a couple of really simple things. Sometimes I do like a timeline, and I let people, put things that happened and that they remember here that were either wonderful and great joys, or were things that really almost made them leave the church. We begin to look at some of that, and then to say, well, how did we deal with that at that point in time? Is that still hanging around? Do we still need to deal with that a little bit more? We try to have some small group conversations and let people, mostly it's just taking the time to give people who really have something to say the opportunity to say it, and try to do it in a whole variety of ways, because what works for one person is not going to work for another one. It may be somebody just needs to come into my office and tell me about it. So if we don't allow enough time for that to happen, we don't allow enough time for some of the rumblings to start, then that's when you just sort of put a call committee in place in 2 months, and then nothing gets, if there is anything bubbling, it never gets resolved. There are things in churches, I just want to say in churches' DNA that keep them from moving forward. I worked with a church that part of their DNA was that and I told the session this the other night, they had learned, part of their communication was they just went around the pastor. So the congregation had learned to do it, the session had learned to do it. I must have sat there for a couple of weeks wondering why I wasn't hearing, why I didn't know about this. And then, I went to my first session meeting and something came to session, and I was like, well, where did that come from? And they had just learned to do that. So it really had made a difference in how work got done in that congregation, who knew what. I mean, there were little power groups that worked underground to get things moved through. And so sometimes you have to wait and see if any of that starts to come out. I don't think that happens here. I think this is a pretty open congregation. But, there may be something we don't know about. And yes, people who think things are just fine are not going to want to do this. But, we try to make it interesting, fun, worthwhile, encourage people to participate in all these activities and conversations and whatever we're doing, adult education forums. Somebody asked me if I preached on interim ministry, and I do, but I don't hit you over the head with it. I try and kind of slide it in here and there. So, we'll see how that goes. I may find that there's nothing going on and everybody's perfectly happy, but I don't think that's true. I would be very surprised if that were true.
If I might say this, I would even say, if you were to find that everybody's happy, part of your job is to make us unhappy enough.
My job is to push them to tell me the truth. I think You know, I think I said that in the sermon last week. Even in the healthiest of congregations, there's work to be done. There is work to be done here, and we just need to figure out how to go about doing it. And to get people to buy into it.
Is part of the goal of the interim process membership retention?
Membership retention? Yes and no. Oftentimes, people will not necessarily stop coming or give up their membership. I mean, most people, if we're in an interim time, will say, okay, I'm going to wait until the new pastor comes. But I'm probably not going to go to church until that person gets here, the real pastor. That's what I kind of call it, the real pastor. Which always makes me feel no. But I don't know that churches often experience a lot of membership growth during the interim time. Although I think it's possible. Now we'll need to talk. I don't know if Jen does it or who does the new member classes, but we need to get one set up and try and identify if there are people who are interested in membership. But membership retention, I don't think there will be a lot of drop off in membership, mostly because people will just be waiting to see who's going to be hired to call. Found out what the process is yet for new members.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about it. We'll revisit some of what we do and what we haven't been doing, and see what works best. I'm really happy to see everybody wearing a name tag. I mean, you might think that I remember all of you from 20 years ago, but honestly, I'm sorry, I don't. I always tell people I can hold 2 congregations in my head. So if you were 2 congregations ago, you're gone. Although I did pull out, I've got membership directories back in 1986. So some of you I know. And listen, I live.
We don't look the same.
No. We haven't changed. My children will be glad about those pictures. But yes, new membership, I think during the interim time, we still have to keep working at it as best we can. I don't know how yet we go about identifying people who are interested in membership. But I think it's always our job to be open to the community, to be welcoming to the community. I think we need to think of different ways that we can do that. I think there are certain times of the year that people come to church, people come back to church. I'm going to be very interested in watching church attendance, worship attendance numbers, and see when they dip and when they come back up, or if they go down and stay down for a long time. We'll need to maybe talk about worship if that happens. But I think those are the kinds of things I pay attention to. I'm not so interested in membership numbers as I am in worship attendance.